Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Perspectives today, and we're learning more about what the experts and those concerned about the opioid crisis are doing now to save lives, reverse the trend, and to foster a healthier community here in coastal Alabama. Well, since 2021, fentanyl and other opioids are considered the greatest drug threat by law enforcement in Alabama. Alabama's location, close proximity to Atlanta, makes it a convenient spot for connection to illegal drugs. Atlanta is considered a major illegal drug distribution area for the Southeast, and the major interstates, including 65 and 10 that run across the state of Alabama, contribute to the illegal drug trade in the state. Now, fentanyl and other opiates are not produced in Alabama. Now, most of these opiates abused in the state are transported from out of state or are obtained from internet sources and shipped. Law enforcement reported an increase in fentanyl transportation as well as distribution over the past 12 months. Fentanyl has been encountered in the form of counterfeit pills, as well as mixed disguised in with multiple other illegal drugs. Now, fentanyl is also most commonly combined with controlled prescription drugs and heroin, as reported by law enforcement. Fentanyl and other opiates were reported as the drug with the greatest increase in availability, and they say a high availability of fentanyl in Alabama. A high level of use of fentanyl is also being reported. The overdose death rate in Alabama continues to increase. Jefferson County had a 68% increase from 2020 to 2021. And according to the Alabama Department of Mental Health, fentanyl attributed to treatment admissions, it now has the highest increase at 78%. Fentanyl and other opiates were ranked as the second greatest contributor to violent crime and property crime by law enforcement in Alabama. Joining us today on Perspectives, Virginia Guy, Executive Director of the Drug Education Council. Dr. Karen Marlowe, Associate Dean for Academic Programs at Auburn University, Professor, Pharmacy Practice, and Founding Director of the Center for Opioid Research, Education, and Outreach. And Mobile County Sheriff Paul Birch. Well, after a quick break, we'll talk with our guests, Virginia Guy, Dr. Marlowe, and Sheriff Paul Birch, to learn more of what's being done to address the pressing issue of the opioid epidemic and of the impactful strategies now being developed for a safer and healthier future for the coastal Alabama community. Perspectives continues in just a moment. Welcome back. And today we're talking about opiates and concerns about fentanyl as well as other issues that affect our community. And today our very special guest, Virginia Guy, Dr. Karen Marlowe, and of course, Sheriff Paul Birch. We thank you for being here to discuss this. We've been talking, Virginia, about some things prior to the interview today. And one of the things that you made a statement about how this is the most dangerous time, I guess, that you've seen in the years that you've been working in the community to bring the awareness of concerns about drugs, illicit drugs, as well as concerns about pharmaceutical drugs. And that's what I was wondering. And that first question I have for you all is, how did this just seem to explode into the mainstream of distribution, the illicit trading of drugs? How did it happen that fentanyl has just all of a sudden become a major concern?
Right. You know, it's so powerful and the drug dealers make so much money off of it. This has really become the scariest time ever and the most dangerous for street drug use. There is no safe drug on the street at all. If you, unless you get something prescribed by your physician and filled at a pharmacy, it is considered very, very dangerous.
And Dr. Marlowe, you have been a part of creating a operation to address these issues because serious concern, and your I guess pharmacology background, what are you seeing as it relates to why this fentanyl has just infiltrated everything?
Well, one of the most important things, I think, is to understand that fentanyl is so much more potent. It's 1,000 times more potent than anything else that we use, and we do use fentanyl when we treat patients, like cancer patients. But the fentanyl that's out in the community, this fentanyl that's illicit, is being mixed with other agents, other drugs like heroin. It's being mixed with marijuana. It's being mixed with all of these other agents like the pictures you've shown. And that's why we can't predict the potency. We don't know how much is out there. And I know there's slogans out there like one pill can kill, just these little bits. And so as Virginia was saying, it's so important to know that you can't trust anything unless it comes from a healthcare provider, from your pharmacy. You can't know what that potency is. And so we don't want to take anything for granted.
My goodness. And sure, of course, Sheriff Birch, you are working to control the streets when we talk about things being sold on the streets. And just here in the last 24, 48 hours, you've dealt with someone that you arrested for fentanyl issues, and you confiscated some fentanyl. We'll show that a little later in the program this morning. But tell us, what have you seen in the last, how many years did this really start to, you saw fentanyl just creep in to where it became the primary concern in many cases?
You know, locally, we started seeing it in about the last year, and 12, 18 months, but it's unlike anything I've seen. I started my career in the crack cocaine era when it was beginning, and there's no comparison. Especially the fatality rate, and it's just as Virginia and Dr. Marlowe both said, that it's not regulated in the way that it's processed. So you may take 5 pills out of an illegal batch that you bought, and you're fine. You take that 6th one, you're dead, because there's just they don't regulate the potency, and they mix it up and ship it out simply to make money, and it's cheap. It's much cheaper than say cocaine or regular cocaine, regular heroin. They use cutting agents, or it's just outright fake, being 100% fentanyl. And it's like taking a Derringer and putting a bullet in and pull the trigger and see what happens.
Recently, you had to deal with some of the people who were working in your corrections at the jail. Was that fentanyl on those pieces of paper? Because I remember you making a demonstration of how you could get a top piece of the paper, but if you're getting some of that paper down below, the chances of you getting a higher dose of something, was that fentanyl they were dipping that in?
Some of it, we had several different operations going on, but some of it did test positive in a field test for fentanyl. Obviously, until we get a report back from Department of Forensic Sciences, we can't say affirmatively that that's what it is.
But even a concern on that end. And Virginia, I saw a piece about fentanyl being made in Mexico not long ago, and the concern was for the safety of the person making it. People were dying from mixing that up to create the fentanyl pills. So when you talk about the danger of it, you have no idea what someone has done to create a product to end up then being on the streets.
Right. This fentanyl is just so dangerous. The fentanyl that's made in Mexico and comes across the border and then gets into our community. It's just incredibly dangerous to everybody. And in the very beginning of this, most people with active addiction were trying to avoid fentanyl. Because they knew it was so deadly. Now what we're seeing when people come in for treatment, most of the time fentanyl is actually their drug of choice, because they've started out on the opiates, and then they moved into heroin, and then, as they say, it's just not doing it for me anymore. And so they're actually seeking out the fentanyl. So it's just become very dangerous. It's real difficult for families. If there's any families dealing with this, worried about their loved ones, please call us, because there's a lot of help available, and we're able to help the entire family.
When you talk about family, is it something that is a consideration now that families should have Narcan in their home if they know they've got someone who has an addiction?
Absolutely, absolutely. The nasal part of the nasal component of Narcan is very, very effective in reducing, in reversing an overdose death. So yes, we really do recommend that people keep that with them.
I guess, Dr. Marlowe, the question is, are you comfortable with that being something that you can buy now over the counter instead of it being prescribed?
Yes, and I agree with Virginia. It's important to keep it, and we actually suggest that if you interact with anybody, not just the families of someone who's in recovery, or if you know somebody in your family is struggling with addiction, but also if you have a business, it's a good idea to have it in your business, your place of business. It's also a good idea in your church space, or we advocate for schools, in college spaces, youth group spaces, anywhere where there's potential. 200 people in this country a day die from overdoses, or more than 200 people a day. And so as many places as we can that can have naloxone available can help prevent those deaths. Every box has 2 doses, and so the problem with fentanyl is sometimes it takes multiple doses. And it's also important to know that it's important to activate 911 as well alongside naloxone.
My goodness. This has been a game changer, Sheriff Birch, and when you talk about it being something that's traded and it's cheap to make and people are making money from it, what kind of dollars are they seeing from the cost of them making it to selling it? Is there a huge
Well, let's just say
expanse in there?
a gram of cocaine's, $100, $120. A gram of fentanyl's $20, $15, depending on who you're getting it from. And so it's much more accessible. Again, you don't know what you're getting. And then one of the things that we've seen in changes too is, all the patrol vehicles now have fentanyl on board. I'm sorry, the Narcan on board.
Right.
And we've had to incorporate in our in-service training. One of our sheriff surgeons has to teach a class and on administering that and what to do when you encounter it. So it's changed a lot of things in the way we do things.
And it can be dangerous for the officer if he doesn't know how to address that stash or that fentanyl that's being confiscated from the criminal.
Yeah, all that's incorporated in the training. I'm sure the photo you'll show later, you'll see that they probably have a double set of gloves on, and the officers will be masked up and protected, and you have to do the best you can.
Right.
There is occasionally an accidental exposure, but we do our best to avoid that.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk more, a lot to talk about, as well as talking about the previous conference just held to bring all the experts together to try and make a difference in our community. We're talking this morning, opiates, fentanyl, here on Perspectives. More in just a moment. Welcome back. We're talking to Virginia Guy, Dr. Karen Marlowe, and of course Sheriff Paul Birch. Now, when you look at the concerns about who's using it, we all have perceptions about who's an addict, the age group, and this game though has changed completely with fentanyl, because at one time it seemed that there was like a 25, 35 age group, but now it could be anybody.
Right. Well, really, everybody's at risk for this. First, let me say, too, that I've never met anybody who became addicted that meant to be. Nobody means to become addicted, whether they start out using because they're partying or they start out using because they're treating real pain. No one intends to be addicted. But once they do, it can be very, very dangerous with this fentanyl out on the street. So we really want to make sure that everybody knows that, there's help available and that there is some hope for this, that it's not just a totally hopeless situation. But we need to start talking early, and we need to talk often, to schools, to college campuses, because really everybody's at risk. So families need to talk about it, churches need to talk about it, businesses need to talk about it. I think the more we can have these type of programs and talk about it, the better off our community will be. Very important.
And Dr. Marlowe, we had spoken earlier about defining who it is now, and that's what Virginia said. It could be anybody, and that's one of the things that in your job that you are making sure that people have a better understanding of.
We do. Within our center, we spend quite a bit of time educating folks across the state and making sure they understand it's not an urban problem or a rural problem. It's not a problem of a certain age group. It's, as Virginia was saying, it's all age groups, and it's all groups in our community. And so we need to make sure that we're all aware and we're all educated, and that we know that everyone is potentially at risk. And as Virginia said, no one sets out or thinks that they're going to run into this, but we all are at risk.
And I guess the scariest part is what you all both have shared in the last year or so with me, Virginia and Sheriff Birch, about one pill can kill, which is something circulating around the, I guess you can say, in the atmosphere now. But you also say you're playing Russian roulette with this.
Yeah, again, you could take, X number and be fine. That next one will be your last one. To y'all's point, it does run all age groups nowadays, but what really opened our eyes, at least from the sheriff's office, was, I don't remember if it was earlier this year or late last year, we had the juvenile from one of the local schools.
Yes.
And that was one of the first arrests we made in direct relation to that overdose, and that helped spark, some of the bills that have now been passed, and again, that's a child that's been lost as a result of something that she didn't know what she was taking.
Well, just in doing our homework, preparing to speak with you all, we had two situations, one in Okaloosa County where a teenager and then a young 20-something arrested for pills and containing fentanyl, and then just here in Mobile County, a 30-some-year-old woman arrested, and you've got a picture that you share with us of the product itself. We'll show that to you. Tell us exactly what we're looking at here.
Well, that's a little over 20, right at 28 grams of fentanyl, which is trafficking weight. Well, under the new law, 1 gram's trafficking weight. So the worst part of this case, and this was just a couple of hours ago.
Yes.
This lady was taking her child to school while transporting that. But with that amount, under the new law that was passed in April, that should be life in prison based on that law.
So this is serious business, and you're looking at ways to get people to wake up. And of course, that's why you had your first opiate summit. What came out of that? You brought some heavyweight folk together, including Dr. Marlowe, as part of that, and you and Mayor Stimson and others. What do you think the results of it?
Well, I think that was all of the community leaders were there talking about what we can do about it. I mean, it was a fantastic summit. We kind of put our heads together. We heard from reports of where we stand today and then what we can do going forward. We plan to continue to have those type of summits. Like I said, I think one of the most powerful things in our community is getting everybody together, getting us to all understand it, and then raise awareness throughout the community that this crosses all racial and socioeconomic barriers. This can affect everybody, and it's really so tragic when we have young children overdosing and dying. It's tragic. We're losing just way too many people.
We recently had a pastor on who is a part of a clerical effort to train other pastors how to be aware, how to look out for it, how to be a oasis for people to come as they help them transition to you as well as other treatment type situations. And so it is really something that, you remember just a few years ago, we were concerned about people in West Virginia and the Iron Belt, Rust Belt, I should say, areas where people didn't have employment, and some things were happening in those communities. But now you're talking rural communities where usually that's the area you think things are pretty much, straight and narrow.
Yes. And the important piece here is what Virginia is pointing out. This is not something that any one of us is going to solve or any one group is going to solve. It's going to take a community effort, and it's going to take statewide efforts. And it's going to take all of us from law enforcement, from the healthcare community, from our civic organizations, working together to find solutions that work, because we are talking about so many different groups, and no one piece is going to work for all the different groups that need it.
Sheriff Birch, what do you see that your need is in law enforcement right now as it relates to helping deal with this and combat this?
Well, we have a really good proactive division that does address, these cases when we get them. The biggest thing I would ask is that if you know of someone or even hear of someone who is dealing fentanyl or other illegal drugs, either call us and report it, call your local law enforcement, or go to mobilelso.com on our crime tips. You can submit it anonymously, but we address every single one of those. You know, again, manpower is always an issue, and we'll help address it, you know, faster. But you know, we will always pursue every one of these leads to get every bit we can off the street.
And of course, Virginia, you're in the schools. What are you hearing and seeing with the kids now, with what they hopefully have heard about the danger of this?
I think they're getting the message. You know, we're talking, you know, kids are really bright. And when we talk to them about the dangers and about how they can protect themselves and their friends and to not take anything from anybody, you know, not take anything anybody gives them, to make sure that, you know, they're only taking medicine that's prescribed for them and they're getting it from their parents, that, you know, they understand those kind of things. And sadly, so many of them have lost people in their family, you know, and, you know, we're seeing a group of children that are being orphaned by the deaths of the 30s and 40s, the parenting generation. So, you know, this is affecting everybody. It's affecting families. You know, parents or grandparents are parenting that never intended to because of the overdose epidemic. So we've, you know, there's so many parts to it that we are trying to bring everybody together so we can address the whole thing.
Never enough time, but I thank the three of you for being here, but most importantly for being a part of this, working together to hopefully combat this, to beat it, and to get things back in order for us in our community. Virginia Guy, Dr. Karen Marlowe, and of course, Sheriff Paul Birch, we thank you all. And here's the contact information for the Drug Education Council, the phone number there, as well as the website, drugeducation.org. And as Sheriff Birch mentioned, you can call that crime tips line, 251-574-8633, and report any information that you have. It is anonymous, and so make sure that you do what you can to benefit the community. Well, thanks for joining us here on Perspectives, and of course, we've got more coming your way each week on our social media platforms. Until next time, you have a great week ahead.